Hi there, I'm Rex King, and welcome back to From the Archive. In 1945, Universal was in trouble. They were really struggling as far as the studio is concerned. They had only made $4.6 million in their previous year and was very much not looking good for them. In 1946, they actually merged with another company and became Universal International. And they continued to struggle. Meanwhile, at the same time, their top contract players, Abbott and Lou Costello, were also kind of in a spot of bother. They were still considered highly popular, but they were starting to have some infighting and weren't having the success they had found in the early 40s. But one film would kind of save both the comedy duo and the studio. That one film? Abbott and Costello Meet Frankenstein. So, Abbott and Costello Meet Frankenstein was directed by Charles Barton, and it actually almost didn't happen because Abbott felt like the script was completely crazy and would not work. He felt like his 5-year-old daughter could come up with something better. He's actually on record for saying that. The studio had to give him a $50,000 advance to convince him to do this picture. And to be honest, the comedy duo isn't even the only thing this film has going for it. Lon Chaney Jr. returned to play Lawrence Talbot. Glenn Strange, who had taken over the duties of Frankenstein from Boris Karloff, came in to do this film. And they even got the legend himself, Bela Lugosi, to come back for only the second and the last time to play Dracula. And this film is a huge success. It was released in June 1948 on a budget of about $793,000. And it, according to box office numbers at the time, made about $3.2 million. A huge success for both the studio and the comedy duo. This would set off a chain reaction for Abbott and Costello as they started a new film series called the Meet series, where they would meet different colorful characters and hilarity would ensue. But how does this film hold up? Is it still worth watching? Well, let's talk about it. And let's start off with the story. So for those of you who don't know, Abbott and Costello Meet Frankenstein follows these two couriers played by Abbott and Costello, one named Wilbur, one named Chick. And pretty much they get assigned to bring these packages over to this House of Horrors, which is some sort of wax museum. In said boxes is Count Dracula, played by Bela Lugosi, and Frankenstein's monster, played by Glenn Strange. Dracula has an evil plan to revive Frankenstein's monster to his former glory, but he needs the brain of a simpleton, someone he can manipulate easy. Who better than Wilbur? So, basically, there's your plot. You have the monsters trying to get Wilbur's brain into Frankenstein. The only thing standing in their way is another monster, the Wolfman, Lawrence Talbot, played by Lon Chaney Jr., and there's your story. So, whenever I dive into a horror comedy, I'm always worried whether or not they're going to nail a decent balance between horror and comedy. And I'll say this. This film is a perfect example of doing those two genres together and getting a successful result. Now, what I mean by that is we have our comedy duo doing classic bits, and honestly, I laughed throughout most of them. And then you have our monsters, who I was worried they were going to play very comedically, but they actually play them pretty straight. So the horror element is a pretty straight horror element. Now, obviously, we're talking about the 1940s horror, but so it's not as scary as it would be today, but it still works, and I really enjoyed that. After all, I'm a huge fan of the Universal monsters, and I'm really glad to see that they managed to hold to the reverence of those creatures and their with what they initially did with them. And they don't compromise at all. Plus, it's nice to see Frankenstein doing something. I'm saying that because in the previous two films before this, House of Frankenstein and House of Dracula, he was pretty much non-existent, even though he's supposed to be a major player, especially in House of Frankenstein. You know, the film that has his name in it. And I also liked how they managed to nail Lawrence Talbot and what he was dealing with as far as a character. Like, he's a good guy who just wants to stop these other monsters from wreaking havoc, while also realizing that he has to prevent himself from wreaking havoc as the Wolfman. It's a nice duality. There is a lot of good things to enjoy about this film. Now, is it perfect and does it hold up under today's standards? I would argue it does, especially if you're a fan of 1940s monster movies. You could make the argument that it doesn't because it's not scary, but I would respectfully disagree with you there. I think the comedy really still lands today and is really enjoyable. I really found myself surprisingly enjoying this movie. I was expecting to, honestly, kind of hate it, but they nailed everything. Now, even the visuals are really good, and that's to be expected because, well, for the animated sequences, which include like an animated opening and like Dracula's transformation, they got the legend Walter Lantz. You know, the guy who made Woody Woodpecker. So, yeah, that was probably a smart decision. And honestly, it shows. There are several key shots in this film that you can see his handiwork, and yeah, it's really works and elevates the film above other movies of the time period. I really enjoyed this one, and I highly recommend it to anyone who's a fan of monster movies, a fan of horror comedies, and a fan of, obviously, Abbott and Costello. Anyway, that's my opinion on Abbott and Costello Meet Frankenstein. What did you think about it if you've seen it? Let me know in the comments below. And if you like this video, please like, comment, and subscribe. Well, we've been on a tear of good movies. You know what that means? We gotta rip that band-aid off and review something pretty bad. Psycho Beach Party, folks. Pray for me. This is not gonna be a fun one. See you then.